Hey everyone, welcome to my channel on this cloudy day. The sun might pop out every now and then, but it's mostly cloudy. Well, the reason I'm out here today is because there's a question I used to get asked in the year 2019 or even 2018, 2020, 2021, but I haven't been asked it this year. And that question is, hey, where is the DJI Phantom 5? You know what? This year in 2022, no one asked that question. I think everybody's given up on it. The only question I get asked these days are, hey, I'm poor. Give me a drone. Yes, that's not a question, but that's exactly how they're phrased in the comments below most of my videos. And if you look below this one, you'll probably see more of them. Now, for me, a guy who flies drones, I grew up in the era of the Phantom drones. Oh, here comes the sun. I grew up in the era of the Phantom drones, and I kind of miss the Phantom. So I was looking through some of my drones and I saw the Phantom 4 Pro Plus, which I have, and I thought, I haven't flown that in over a year. Geez, I think a year and a half. It's been a long time since I flew that drone. So I've brought it out today. And at the same time, I'm going to discuss the Phantom 5. If DJI should ever make one, what should be included, and what I know about it. Now, I know a lot of you are watching this right now and going, what's a Phantom? All I know is Mavic. That's because we have the Mavic generation. Every drone looks like a Mavic. You know, DJI came out with the Mavic in 2016 and that was it. The world became the Mavic world and the Phantom world became no longer the Phantom world. So what I'm going to do for all of the newbies is I'm going to give you a history super quick of the Phantom and why we no longer have a Phantom today and what are the possibilities of getting the Phantom 5. So I'm going to defer this next segment to Indoor Steve, who's in a nice warm area, and he's going to tell you all about the Phantom lineage and where we are today and why we no longer have a Phantom 5. Why did it stop at Phantom 4? So Indoor Steve, take it away. Yes, I'm Indoor Steve and I'm going to teach you all about the history of the Phantom. I'm going to try to do this really quick. All right, so back in the year 2006, there was this Harry Potter looking guy called Frank Wang. And Frank made these little circuit boards with flight controller information on them that people started to use in the RC hobby for all sorts of purposes. Then he got so popular making these in China that he started his own company and he called it DJI Innovations. And if you translate that to English, that means General Innovations. And if you put it in layman's terms that we all know today, we call it DJI. So that was the year 2006 that it all began, and in China a lot of people were building their own drones. So years went on and then he finally got enough money together so that he could make a drone, a Phantom, and he called it the Phantom 1 and he put it on the market. It didn't sell totally international, just in a few countries, but the Phantom 1 was a bit of a revolution because it was a ready-to-fly drone for beginners. So in other words, you didn't have to build anything. The only problem is, by today's standards, it wasn't that great. But let me tell you about it. So I have a little chart over here. So the Phantom 1 came out in the year 2013 in the month of January. It sold for $799 US. It only flew for 10 minutes, and guess what? The batteries were just RC 3-cell batteries that you could find any place. So you had your own charger, or use the charger it came with it, and you could charge up any batteries and use any batteries you liked. That's not the case today, and we'll get to that. Range on the Phantom 1 was about a quarter of a mile because it was only Wi-Fi, and they had a lot of flyaways because it was a new innovation using GPS for positioning to have the drone fly up, stay stable, and fly off. There was no camera, no gimbal, no nothing, no app. You didn't use a phone with it. There was no such thing. It didn't exist. You just took your controller and flew it that way and had a blast. And also back then, when you put the props on, you had to screw them on, like you just spin them and screw them in place. There's still drones today sort of like that, but that was the style back then. Now, Frank Wang, the CEO of DJI, at that time a little kid, was kind of impressed that his little Phantom 1 was selling really well because a lot of people were putting GoPros on them and making them into camera drones. You couldn't see what you were filming because you had no app or anything. You just pointed the drone wherever and you filmed away. So he contacted GoPro and said, we should go into partnership. And then he made the Phantom 2 later that year. So the Phantom 2 came out in December of 2013. Now, Frank was a pretty smart guy and he looked at companies like Apple and he said, some companies make one product, but then they make multiple products off that one product. So in other words, on an assembly line, you make one product, but then if you make different versions of that one product, the cost is very low to just add little add-ons or take away things, and you get a huge amount of revenue. So he realized that with the Phantom 2. So when the Phantom 2 came out, there were many, many models. First off, you had the basic Phantom 2 with no camera, and it sold for US $899. And he had a proprietary battery, so you had to use his battery. So he knew he was going to make more money by selling more batteries. And what else did it have? Oh, it had an app, but it had no camera or gimbal because he still wanted you to use GoPros. And he thought that was going to be the way of the future, with GoPros joining in with DJI and them becoming, you know, like a solidified partnership. However, I'm going to jump ahead and tell you right now, GoPro kind of thought the drone and a camera thing was a niche market. It wasn't really what they wanted to get into. They wanted the action camera for surfboards, mountain bikes, all that other stuff, not for drones, because drones weren't that popular. So then Frank Wang said, well, we'll make the FC40. Now, a lot of you probably have never seen the FC40. I know I've never seen it in Canada, but it's been around in North America. It has a camera on it, a little 720p camera. The camera can only look straight forward. There's no gimbal or anything like that. It's basically a Phantom 2 with a camera, and it connects to the app. It was one of the first systems where you put an app on your phone and you could see what that camera saw on your phone while you flew. Now, since GoPro was not doing much for DJI, well, DJI then made the Phantom 2 Vision. You know, this is all around the same time that the Phantom 2 came out, just multiple models. They were just pumping them out one after another. So the Phantom 2 Vision had a camera on it, still no gimbal, just a lot of vibration dampening, and the camera could move all the way down or all the way forward, and once again, it came back to your app, and you could see these drones in the Phantom 2 were getting like 25 minutes flight time, so a lot of people were having a blast with them, and they were selling really well. And if I look over here, that Phantom 2 Vision sold for $999, and you know the range on these things, since they were still using Wi-Fi, it was getting better, but it was only, I'm looking down here, maybe half a mile if you were lucky. Then in 2014, DJI hit a home run with the Phantom 2 Vision Plus. If you look at my channel all the way back to some of the first videos, those are filmed with the Phantom 2 Vision Plus. So what was so great about the Vision Plus? Well, not the price, because it was $1,299 US, but it had a 2-axis gimbal. You know, unheard of, a 2-axis gimbal on a drone. Yep, so it was a 2-axis gimbal back then with a camera that shot at 1080p with an app that you got the image back. They even had in the app, they had this thing called Ground Station. Ground Station is sort of what we would call today waypoints, except Ground Station for DJI back then is you could take your map, pick different waypoints, different heights, send the drone off. The drone is no longer connected to your controller because it's out of range. There wasn't much range on the old Phantom 2. It would go way out of range and just fly the path as long as there was battery power, and then come all the way back home. And then you would review the video and go, oh my God, that's so cool. Because you couldn't see it on your screen or your phone or whatever because it was out of range. But it was really awesome. Of course, you know, the FAA didn't like that, so Ground Station had to go. Now, by the year 2015, DJI fully gave up on GoPro and said, go your own way. And it's a good thing, because they came out with the Phantom 3 Pro, which was the most popular drone they ever made. The Phantom 3 Pro, everybody wanted it. It had a 4K camera, 3-axis gimbal, light bridge technology. Today we use OcuSync to communicate, but back then it was light bridge, which was a very expensive technology, but it was in this drone. Still only had 25 minutes flight time, and they added geofencing. You know, when the drone is smarter than you and tells you, I can't take off here because you're near an airport? They started to put that in back then, and people didn't mind it back then. Nowadays, everybody hates it, but back then, people didn't mind it. They were good with it. Now, like the Phantom 2, Frank Wang said, I'm going to take that Phantom 3 Pro and make multiple models and sell them at different price points so that I can reach everybody within their price spectrum. So you had the Phantom 3 Pro, which had the 4K camera and the light bridge. Then the next one down was the Phantom 3 Advanced. All they did was they took out the 4K camera and put in a 2.7K camera, but left the light bridge. Then you had the Phantom 3 Standard. They took out the light bridge and they took out the 4K camera, so you had Wi-Fi and 2.7K. You see where I'm going with this? Then later on, in another year past that, they made a 4K version, back with the 4K camera, but only with Wi-Fi. So then the world thought, how is DJI going to top the Phantom 3 Pro? How can they top that? Well, in 2016, looking at my chart here, it was a crazy year for DJI because they came out with the Phantom 4, but they came out with that in March. Now, the Phantom 4 was a giant upgrade over the Phantom 3 Pro in many ways, except for the camera. The camera was basically the same camera as on the Phantom 3 Pro, but they added active track. The drone could follow you. That was unheard of. That was the first time you had a DJI drone following you. Obstacle avoidance. It could detect things in front of you and stop. That was pretty awesome. They put a sport mode in it. They put a bigger battery so it could fly for 30 minutes. And they enhanced the light bridge technology. And you're getting like a 3-mile range with this baby. Now, the good thing was the Phantom 4 sold like hotcakes and people were buying it in droves. The bad thing was DJI came out in November with the Phantom 4 Pro, this one right here. So people who bought the Phantom 4 were like, what the heck, DJI? I just bought this a few months ago and now you come up with a Pro model? The Pro model had even more range, and not only that, the camera, if I spin this around here, look at the camera. They put the 1-inch sensor professional camera on this. This is the same camera that was on the Inspire 2, the lower end model of the Inspire 2. It actually has a real lens on it too, with optical elements in it. And it has a mechanical shutter, something unheard of in the drone world. And it has a manual control aperture. All of this on a 20 megapixel, 1-inch camera sensor. So pretty amazing for the year 2016. And they did something everybody wanted in the hobby. They said, hey, we don't want to use our phones and tablets anymore. We want something great for outdoors. So they made a model with an integrated screen and they called it the Phantom 4 Pro Plus. And this is it right here. So back in 2016, you could have this 1000 nit screen for outdoors. It was pretty good back then, you know, for technology wise, but it was pricey. So that came out in November of 2016. And then they brought out in early 2017, they brought out the advanced model. So the advanced model was basically the same thing. And all they did is they took out part of the communication of the light bridge. So it had less range, sold for less. So people could have the same drone, pay less money, just have less range and buy it. And also the advanced model replaced the original Phantom 4. And then after that, they released the Obsidian. The Obsidian is an all-black model of the Phantom 4 Pro. And what they did is they made a type of magnesium housing for the camera, because the cameras were all getting smashed. If you've ever owned the Phantom, when you land, sometimes you hit something, poink, 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 and it smashes the camera. So they made it out of a type of magnesium, make it really strong. That's the black Obsidian model. And then later they came out in, what year did they come out? It's over here, 2018. They came out with the Phantom 4 Pro 2.0. And what they did is they took out the light bridge chunk and they put in OcuSync. And the reason they put in OcuSync in the Phantom is because at that time people were flying with those DJI RE goggles and people wanted to use their Phantom with it. So in order to use the Phantom with that, since the goggles were OcuSync, they had to make the Phantom OcuSync and then they could sell more goggles. All right, so that's the history, but the history does not end there because we don't have a Phantom 5 today. Why? What killed the Phantom? Well, the first thing that killed the Phantom was the Mavic. DJI was unprepared for the success of the Mavic. The Mavic costs less to build than a Phantom because of the technology in a Mavic. And Mavics sell in numbers higher than the Phantom ever did. So DJI actually stopped some of their production lines of making the Phantom and making them make Mavics instead. And they were planning on going back to make a Phantom 5, but the world just loved the Mavics. The next problem was actually something pretty incredible. Do you remember when they took the Phantom off the market? You couldn't even find it on the DJI website. So we all thought, hey, they're coming out with the Phantom 5 now. You can't buy the old Phantom 4. But what happened was DJI had 120 million in fraud scandal happen in the company. What was happening is, say a manufacturer was making, let's say, the motors for DJI. So the motors would come in as inventory to DJI. Then some employees who are a little fraudulent would take those motors and then sell them to another company, you know, for next to nothing. That other company would sell them back to DJI for a profit. So DJI was essentially buying the same pieces twice and losing an awful lot of money. So DJI had to put a kibosh on the Phantom line until they got that sorted out. And the third thing that killed the Phantom was basically, so number one was the Mavic, number two was the fraud scandal, And number 3 was the media. Yes, the media. Do you remember the days, if you were as old as me, growing up watching a black and white TV or a color TV, and a pilot would report seeing some sort of object in the sky? Doesn't matter what it was. They called it a UFO. Well, today they call it a UAV, or they just call it a drone. The media never says UAV or anything like that, or RC plane or RC helicopter or balloon or a garbage bag floating in the sky. They all say drone because it's more a sensationalism for the media to say drone. Because of that, every time they mentioned it, they put a picture of this. Every time you have the guy, the announcer talking right there, what's beside the person? You've got a picture of a Phantom. It's so iconic, the shape, that this was actually producing negative results for DJI, vice positive results. And even governments were now banning this look. And if you look at a lot of signs around the world that say no drones allowed, they're pretty much this shape. It's a universal shape and it's a negative universal shape. So DJI could not put out another negative product. Really? Honestly? Now, if you're wondering, was there ever a Phantom 5 in the production lines way back in 2016, 2017? Yeah, there was. There was several Phantom 5s. DJI had plans year after year to keep the Phantom going with a Phantom 5, a Phantom 6, and so forth and so on. Do you remember back when we would see all these images of a Phantom? It was gray, silver gray in color, and it had removable lenses, and we all thought that was going to be the Phantom 5, and then DJI said, no, hang on guys, that's just a special run for one of our customers. We had one customer that wanted something special, so we made it for that customer. Well, that was sort of a BS story just to hide the fact that was a beta Phantom 5. So the reason that was not for a customer, because honestly, do you think I could call up DJI and said, I would like you to make a Phantom, and I would like you to make lenses that are removable in all different shapes and sizes for this Phantom that you make for me, and I only want to spend $2,000. No. It's going to cost you like $100,000. You got R&D to work on it to get it perfect, everything else. Who's going to pay that much for such a drone? So that was the Phantom 5 in its beginner state. There was also another patent put out for the Phantom with retractable legs, because these legs do get in the way of the camera an awful lot. So there was a patent out to make the legs all pop up under the arms so that the camera would hang down. And there was hope that with that version, the camera would not just look forward, but also look to the sides, or maybe the sides and the back as well. But for the reasons I've already stated, never made it to market. And those models will still never make it to market, because now we're in the year 2022. Any Phantom in the future is going to look even more different than those ones. And have you ever wondered why DJI still sells the Phantom today? You know, it's a 2016 drone. Why do they still make it and sell it today? Hardly anybody's buying it. That's because they make an awful lot of money off this drone in the commercial industry. So they have the Phantom RTK, and that is for mapping and surveying. It's a pretty cool drone, and they sell a ton of those. And they have one for agriculture with a multi-spectral camera on the front, which sells really well if you're in the commercial industry. So will the consumer ever see a Phantom 5? Well, quite possibly, but it's not going to look like this. So I'm going to take you back to Outdoor Steve, and he's going to tell you more about the Phantom 4 and potential Phantom 5. Take it away, Outdoor Steve. All right, we lucked in. The sun came out. I've taken off some layers of clothing because it's getting hot with that sun out. I even took off my gloves. It's only 4 degrees Celsius. I'll put what that is in Fahrenheit up here. But, you know, for us Canadians at this time of the year, that feels warm. Only problem is I forgot to bring my snow pants because my jeans are now melting in the snow. So they're going to be soaking wet. So I got to get through this really quick. So I'm going to make this really fast. So Phantom 4 Pro Plus is what I have. And this is the case it comes in. This case is made by DJI. I don't know if you can still buy it. This is what we used to buy to carry our Phantom 4s around in. So let me open it up and show you something cool inside. So the Phantom 4 is, let me just get rid of these props, and we're going to talk about that in a second. The Phantom 4, in my case, is, it fits inside with the props on. That was not the case back in 2016. It came with props that were quick release, but there was no such thing as foldable props at that time in 2016 until the Mavic Pro came out and then set the world on fire with foldable props and made it like a household name. So these are by Master Air Screw. The props that came originally with this drone look like this, and they are not foldable, they're bendable, and you put them on quick release. Then DJI came out later because everybody said the Phantom is so noisy. They came out with low noise props, and these are them. Same idea. Does it make it quieter? No. Just makes it less annoying, but it's still pretty annoying. It's a loud drone. So let me just pull the drone out and stick it down here. I've got my camera, make sure it's clean. Yep, all clean. So we'll talk about that in a second. So let me get my props out. Now, a lot of people think the Phantom is a large drone because it's one of the best drones for flying in the wind. It flies in the wind really well. The thing is, it's not that large. Here's my phone. This is a iPhone 11 Pro Max, and I'm gonna hold this like this, and there's my phone. Check that out. Try to get my hand out of the way. There you go. There's my phone, and there's the size of the Phantom. You can see it's not super large. So if we're talking Phantom 5 territory, you know, if the Phantom 5 came out, probably be about the same size because it's going to have to carry a payload underneath the camera. But I would suggest that the Phantom 5 would not have arms that are permanently out. They would be foldable. There are drones on the market that look like this, but the arms fold in. One goes this way, one goes this way, one goes this way, and one goes that way. So it would have to have foldable arms. The same is true for these legs down here. These are really great if you're on a boat and you want to reach up and grab your Phantom, or you want to let it take off. It works out really well. But honestly, the camera, see how it's moving around when I'm doing this? It gets the legs in the frame. Same as the props. The props are in the frame as well because the arms are not very high up. They're pretty low. So what would have to happen on a Phantom 5 is these arms would have to go up in the air, you know, sort of like on an X Dynamics Evolve 2, go up a bit and then forward. So yeah, that's what you would probably see on a Phantom 5 if one was ever made. Now the Phantom does weigh quite a bit, but it's because of this battery. This battery here, which you can still buy today, is quite heavy, and it is the bulk of the weight in the Phantom. So let me just put that in. And with the included battery, you're looking at about 31 minutes of flight time. Now, a lot of you who grew up in the days of the Mavic and were not around in the days of the Phantom back in 2013, 2014, you will look at the bottom of this Phantom and go, what is this thing you have going across the bottom? What is that? Do I have it upside down? No, that's how it goes. Well, that is called a gimbal guard because the Phantoms were always prone to the following. Landing, 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 and there would be an object here like a rock, poink, and you wreck your gimbal. It was so common, it was one of the most common things, so everybody bought a gimbal guard for their Phantom. And you could always tell the newbies because the newbies would always put the gimbal guard on wrong, and then their sensors wouldn't work or their GPS would not work, and they would always go, that gimbal guard doesn't work. Well, it does work if you put it on correctly. Another thing to mention really quick is the Phantom 4 in those days had obstacle avoidance front and rear, and it also had it on the Pro model on the sides, but it was sort of like a infrared optical avoidance, so it was pretty bad. And because of that, well, it was kind of like the DJI Spark, and because of that, the drone could not fly very fast for it to work, so it only worked in certain modes like tripod mode, which is a good thing because this thing actually has tripod mode. DJI took that away on a lot of the new drones, but I'm glad it has it on this. So a Phantom 5, if it came out, well, obviously you would have 360 obstacle avoidance. You know, you'd have something on the top as well as the sides, and it would be really, really good, sophisticated, sort of like the Mavic 3 is today with its obstacle avoidance. You can see at the bottom 2 sensors down here. It's got like 4 sensors going across, 2 optical flow, and then 2, I think they're they're ultrasonic, so that's good for flying at night. So you could fly this at night and land. It would sense the ground, and they work quite well for the era this came out in. Now, I should mention the camera because that's why this drone was sold and why they sold a lot of these in the day. They don't sell that much anymore. This camera is one of a kind. If you look at it from the side, you're going to see it looks very different from any camera you'll ever see on a Mavic because it actually has a lens in it. My biggest complaint with the Mavics is that they don't really have a camera lens, professional style. What they have is they have like an action camera lens. An action camera lens, like on my hat and on these cameras down here filming me, it's just a piece of plastic that has one element in it that sits really close to the sensor. So if you look at the new Mavic 3, Mavic 3 Cine even, you'll see that, wow, look at how short that camera is from the lens all the way to the sensor, and that's a micro 4/3 sensor. That means if we ever had a DJI Phantom 5, it would have to have a really good camera and really good lens, and nothing like the Mavics. The Mavics have those little squishy lenses for portability. It would have a real professional lens on it. Would it have removable lenses? You know what? I don't think that is economically sound to make removable lenses. It's so expensive for a company because if the drone doesn't sell well, you've invested a lot of money into lens technology that you're never going to recoup, and they'd have to sell the lenses for an awful huge price. So I highly doubt it. I think they would just have a really, really good lens. And I think if they got rid of the legs and made them retractable on a Phantom 5, then this camera would spin 360, or at least, you know, almost around 360, so that you could film in different locations. And if they were really cool, they'd put a 360 camera on there, so it's automatically always filming above. You have one on the top and you have one on the bottom that films 180 this way and 180 this way, like a lot of modern day drones. DJI could get away with that. And then you never have to point the camera at anything. You just fly the drone, and then later you just pick what you want it to see in the image, like a 360 camera. It would be awesome. All right, so let's look at the controller really quick. Mine is the Phantom 4 Pro Plus, and because of that, my screen rate here is 1000 nits. That means on a bright sunny day like today, I can see it. It's as bright as the most modern cell phones. It's like a crystal sky monitor in there. It's like the RC Pro of today back in 2016, same idea. The only thing I will say about the technology back then is that the operating system on here is DJI, so you cannot connect this unit to a computer and then download files or things off it like you can with the modern day RC Pro and the smart controller and other things. No, you're pretty much stuck with leaving everything on here and trying to feed it off through micro SD cards or other ways, or send it wirelessly over the world. So I cannot put a screen record on here. I've tried it in the past and it actually interferes with the Phantom, so you won't see any screen recording of what I see when I'm flying. But anyways, if a Phantom 5 came out, I couldn't see this type of controller existing in the future. This is the old school controller. It's the same on the Inspire 2. The Inspire 3 is going to have a very modern controller. It won't be like this. So yeah, I could see them going the way of the Inspire 3 when you see that coming out, and the controller for that, it'd be very different than this, much more modern and ergonomic and not so heavy. It's a big battery in here. So yeah, it would be a lot cooler looking than this, and more functional for things like the RC Pro and everything else like that integrated. It'd be really good. All right, I'm going to power this on. Then I'll power on this drone. Now, one thing I have to tell you is I have not flown the Phantom for over a year. It's been over a year, and I have a battery here that hasn't been used in about a year and a half, and it's dead. That's one of the bad things about the technology at that time. I can't charge it, I can't power it on, I can't do anything. I've tried everything. I cannot bring it back to life, so it's dead. In the old days of DJI, it was very common for batteries of that era to die because of the chip inside. The chip requires power to sense power coming in, and because of that, if this is dead and there's no power for the chip can't sense any power. Okay, I gotta stand up. Let's see how wet my legs are. Oh, so get wet down here. Oh, I'm not gonna stay out here long because I'm gonna get freezy cold. All right, I'm going to stand back here so I'm in the frame of that camera over there, and we'll start up our Phantom. I can see the camera working, so I'll put on the record. It says on my screen that I have it set at 4K 60. I'm going to change that in a second, but I just want to mention that this is one of the first drones that DJI ever made that could record at 4K 60 at 100 megabits per second, and it could record in a high resolution 4K, higher than most cameras of today. So the resolution on this, the highest you can get at 4K 60 is 4096 times 2160. It just means I'll have black bars at the top and the bottom when I'm filming. So I'm going to put the record on. Start up the motors. The obstacle avoidance is on. Let's take it on up. There we go. There you go, you can see me in the image. Now the first thing I have to mention, the beeping you hear is just the obstacle avoidance, so I'll hold it away from my mic. Okay, I've put the drone in tripod mode. I just want to show you what tripod mode is and why it was a great thing when DJI had it. Here it is, full blast forward, watch what happens. It just moves so slow. And it films really nice. Watch when I turn now. I'm going to turn to the left, bring it around. It should be so smooth and cinematic. Coming back to me into the sun. This was one of the cool things in the day. There we are. There we go. Now back in 2016, they actually had Active Track. It was new on the market, so I'm going to draw a box around myself. And there, it should be tracking me now. So now I should be able to walk in the snow, and the drone will follow me. And it has, oops, I'm falling in snow. And it has obstacle avoidance on. I can move around, see it's there. It will follow you quite well. The Active Track back in 2016 was really decent. And unlike modern drones, you can bring it down pretty low. Let me see if I can bring it down while it tracks you. That's about as low as I can get it right now. Now the obstacle avoidance, check this out. Obstacle avoidance was not that good back then. Oh, it sees it now, it sees me, but look at these little branches up here. It doesn't really see them, and the props are gonna hit it. So I'm just gonna go backwards here. It should fly backwards. the thing I like the most on this drone is this. On my switch here, I've got sport mode and I have ADI mode. ADI mode turns the GPS off. Watch, GPS going off now. There we go. So now it just blows with the wind. So people like me who've been flying for a long time, this is one of the coolest things with a drone, to fly with no GPS, because you can do much more cool maneuvers when you fly. The drone will actually bank on the sides when you're coming around corners. I don't know if you can see it as I'm coming around. You see how it banks? It banks like an FPV drone almost, because there's no GPS and it doesn't go jerky anyway. And if I let go of the throttle and the gas, it should just keep floating around. It doesn't stop. So you can just imagine if a Phantom 5 was made today, it would be pretty darn sweet. Everything on the camera is related to cinema. So let me just show you, I can change a few things that are pretty cool. So right now I'm in no color. Now I'm gonna go to true color. So did you see a change? I'm gonna go to D-Cine-like. There's D-Cine-like, kind of a flat profile while the sun's going out. That's even flatter. Here's D-Log. That's D-Log. And let me show you, if I correct D-Log, you have to do it in post-production. So correct it now. There you go. So that's corrected. Although the sun's got out behind a cloud, so I don't know how good that's gonna look. Then you go into film mode. That looks kind of different. Then you go into black and white film noir mode. Here we are. Then you go into cool mode, so that's gonna be more brighter blue stuff. Then twilight mode, click on that. That looks kind of weird. Pale mode, sepia mode, warm mode, blue man group, and blockbuster mode. That should just make everything vibrant. So let's go back to none. And the sun comes back out right when I finish all those, but you got the idea, right? Now you can see props in the frame every now and then, and that is one of the bad things. In order to get rid of the props in the frame in the olden days, we had to bring the camera down like this. There you go. No props in the frame when you do that. There we go. So you can see the Phantom 4 Pro was an awesome drone in 2016 for its time, and they still sell it today, which is amazing. The Phantom 5 would be light years ahead of this based on many of the things I mentioned. Anyways, there's probably a lot more things we could see in the Phantom 5. The only thing I could say is that I can tell you this, and you're going to probably wonder how I know this. The Phantom 5 is not dead. Yes, in the future, you may see a Phantom 5. It just depends on economies of scale for DJI to make what they want to make and for you to want to buy what you want to buy. The last time this came out was on the release of the DJI Inspire 2 in 2016, and the DJI Inspire 3 is coming out late this year, supposed to, and this Phantom 5, not this, but a Phantom 5 may be included along with it, because that is in the pro camera segment. So we might see something. So stay tuned for that. All right, guys, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any comments on the Phantom 5 or want to share any information you know about the Phantom 5 or any wishes you might have of the Phantom 5, just post them below, and everybody else will enjoy your comments. All right, guys, catch you in the next video. Oh, and if you want to buy, I have to say this at the end of every video. If you want to buy yourself a Phantom 4 Pro, and you can still get this model with the integrated display, which is pretty sweet, and it does all the things here, except there are no beginner functions on it. In other words, there's no like quick shots and all these other crazy things we have on the modern Mavic drones. It's all based for a professional. So, and it uses the old DJI Go 4 app, which is more for professionals than the DJI Fly app of today. So with all that said, if you're looking to get into something professional and you don't want to spend a lot of money, this might be a good deal for a camera that is, you know, old technology, but still pretty good for doing what it can do. And I'll put links below to where you can find one. All right, guys, thanks for watching this video. Catch you in the next one. Bye.